Yes, hello everyone. Welcome back to another video here on Cluiche with me, Seamus Brady, your host. For this one, I am joined by Aaron Prendergast, the man behind Gaelic Games Fan TV. Aaron, not as busy a weekend in the club championship. Obviously, we're only focusing in on the two games, which is obviously Dr. Crokes winning Munster and Errigal Kieran winning Ulster. But two huge games, and especially in Errigal's case, one of the shocks of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers, Seamus, for having me on again. Much appreciated. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been the story of the club championships. Like literally every weekend, we're getting a shock, we're getting a surprise. Like I think you posted in our group chat yesterday saying we might as well just give up with predictions because it's like literally like I mean when you go back, I mean what Graham's Glen were the favourites, they got beat. Crokes were favourites, they got beat. Then it was like we were all talking about Scottstown. They then get beat by Kilcoo. Then you're looking at Connacht and you're like, right, Padraig Pearse is like, this is a huge opportunity now for them. They then lose to Kildare Strandhill. You're looking at Castlehaven and Munster, given the fact that they kind of, had won Munster the season previous, been knocking on the door a couple of times. They obviously, get beat by Crokes, which fair enough. That probably wasn't that big of a shock. Like Crokes, I think, are a decent side. And like, to be fair to Coola, they did come through Leinster and they probably were expected in some ways to come through Leinster. But then again, like you were looking at it and thinking, right, Kilcoo have now gone and beat Scottstown. Errigal Kieran, don't get me wrong, like serious team. The Canavans, Peter Hart, Joe, Ice Cold, the Goose, which is what I seen on Twitter earlier, which I really like to put away. So I think I might just keep calling them that from now on. And yeah, like they're a great side, but you just thought Kilcoo, like they've been here numerous times. They've found a way to get it done. But yeah, once again, Errigal Kieran come up trumps, and it does feel like a wide open All Ireland. Like, and I know you'd probably look at like Kildare Strandhill as a massive underdogs, but apparently wouldn't be surprised if they went on and won it now, because it does feel completely wide open, and what you think is going to happen is not going to happen. And even in hurling, it's been a very similar trend. I know we're not speaking about hurling this week, but like it's been a very similar trend there as well.
What I've noticed is that the club championship this season has just taken a break from the norm, I'd say you could probably call it, because over the last few seasons we've had, in hurling, it's been Ballygunner, Ballyhale Shamrocks, St. Thomas's that have always kind of been in the final four. This year we've had none of them. Like they've all been eliminated. And then in the football, again, Padraig Pearse's looked really good, taken out. Kilcoo taken out. Kilmacud Crokes taken out. Waddy Graham's Glen taken out. And that has just made it feel completely different. I mean, you put it in this context. The last time any of these clubs were in the final four in the football was 2018 when Dr. Crokes won Munster. 2017, 2018. Like that is a long, long time for any of those four clubs to be back here. Errigal Kieran obviously haven't won Munster in 22 years. Like, I haven't won Ulster, sorry, in 22 years. Don't think they'll win Munster anytime soon. But a lot has changed since any of these clubs have been here. And yeah, let's dive in with the game, which I think was the better of the two. Definitely the more exciting of the two. Errigal Kieran beating Kilcoo. 1 goal and 8 points to Kilcoo's 10 points at the Athletic Grounds. Errigal Kieran win their first Ulster title in 22 years and only their third in their history. An absolutely incredible achievement. And I have to say, the emotion that poured out with him at the final whistle, especially in the TG4 post-match interview with Peter Ogue McCartan, the man of the match, he absolutely wore his heart on his sleeve, and you were rooting for them, especially given that Kilcoo have had more success in recent years. What a day for Errigal Kieran. What a day for Tyrone football in general, because they haven't had the best record, for all the success of the competitiveness of their county championship. It hasn't led to much Ulster success until now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's insane, really, like for Errigal Kieran. Like they definitely have been knocking on the door like a couple of times. Like obviously won a couple of Tyrone titles, didn't win it last year. And as we said, like Tyrone clubs in general don't have a great record in Ulster. Like Errigal Kieran, I think we're the last one to win the Ulster Club Football Championship, I think back in 01, 02 or something of that nature, something like that. So yeah, extraordinary achievement. And it was like it was a weird game because Kilcoo, I thought, did very well defensively. Like Rory Canavan didn't score. Dara Canavan scored 1 point. Niall Brannigan done an excellent job, like at marshalling Rory Canavan, kept him out of the game. And like defensively, Kilcoo were doing strong. Like it was a tense game. It was nervy. You could tell that. Obviously, conditions as well, like up and down the country. And I'm sure we'll get to that when we speak about the game in Munster. But yeah, like Errigal Kieran, they just kept themselves in it. And every time it looked like, every time Kilcoo would dish a blow, Errigal Kieran would come back. And it was neck and neck. And as you said, Peter O'Mccartan, like stepping up 2 points, the point at the end, absolutely outrageous stuff. And that's the thing, like, because I think like when it comes to club championships, like obviously you're always going to look at your obvious, your big names. People are going to talk about the Canavans, Peter Hart, Joe Goose, like they're going to talk about those players. It's probably similar with Crokes. People are going to talk about your Shane Walshes, your Paul Mannions when they won it, but they forget the other, the club players, the other players. There's always other players that have to step up. Like in the end, it's a team game, and you have to have other players that'll step up. And to be fair to Peter Og, like that was, like an absolutely extraordinary point right at the end of the game. And yeah, hats off to Errigal Kieran. Like it was 50-50. It could have went either way. Like maybe, extra time, whatever would have been the right way for it to go. But yeah, hats off to the Throne champions.
Yeah, no, they're absolutely incredible. For Kilcoo, it definitely is going to be a bitter pill to swallow. And this definitely isn't me now just looking in hindsight. Like I respect Kilcoo and their ability and what they've achieved has been absolutely sensational. But they've actually had more or less 2 pretty identical years in the last couple of years now, which is they've absolutely annihilated anybody in the Down Championship. They've got out into Ulster, and the first time that they've ran into a team that doesn't break under the Kilcoo counter-attacks, they've lost. They lost to Scottstown with a last-minute point, and they lost here to Errigal Kieran with a last-minute point. Now, I'm not questioning in any way their ability to close out these games. I'm not. We've seen them close out these games time and time again. But my point is, what I'm saying is the mystique around Kilcoo, is that broken now after 2 back-to-back years where they've been beaten by teams that, haven't had the previous successes that maybe somebody else in Ulster, like a Cross McGlenn or somebody like that, would have had.
Yeah, like, I mean, like, I think you have to, like, they get a lot of hate, Kilcoo, on Twitter and everything else, probably for being a very physical side, and you've seen some of the challenges obviously at the weekend as well. Like they're definitely they're definitely one of them club teams that are the master of the dark arts and everything else that kind of goes with it. But they do deserve lots of credit as well, because they continuously keep coming back and down year after year. When in the last couple of seasons we've looked at Burren coming out Down, who have a lot of under 20 players who've played with Down in the last few seasons, and you're kind of thinking, right, this is the year where, Kilcoo lose their throne and Down, but yet they still pull it out of the bag. And then they go and, do what they did to Scottstown, which was an absolute clinic. And in the end, they got beat by a very good Errigal Kieran side by a point. They limited the Canavans to 1 point, which wasn't from play. So, like, you couldn't have asked for much more there. But in the end, it was probably going forward where they just let themselves down a little bit. Like when you think about it, against Scottstown, they scored 5 goals in that game. Like points wise, they're not, they're like, I know obviously they only lost by a point, but they're not kicking huge numbers probably in terms of points. They don't have too many. Like you look at the Canavans or you look at Errigal Kieran and they've got the Canavans, they've got, Peter Hart, these players, like these class forwards who can step up. Whereas like with Kilcoo, I'm not too sure if they really have too many of them. Like they're relying on lads like Micheál Rooney bursting forward from wing back, Anthony Morgan, like great players and everything else. But it just feels like they probably just lack maybe 1 or 2 more star-studded forwards to maybe kind of kick them on a little bit more. But at the same time, still think Carl Lacey's done an extraordinary job there. Like I think this one will hurt more than last season's one, just because, they do what they did to Scottstown. Watty Graham's Glen obviously had been in the All-Ireland final, a season previous and everything else. So yeah, I think overall they'll be more gutted about this one than last year, but still think overall the season.
Yeah, no, it's been a good season for Kilcoo. It hasn't been what they would want. And what I always said was, especially we'd seen it in previous years. And it seems, well, this analysis, you can pretty much throw it out the window because it really hasn't mattered this season at all. But in previous seasons, I would have looked at, say, a Ballyhale Shamrocks, a Kilmacud Crokes in the football, a Ballygunner in the hurling. And I would have said from the get-go, those clubs would have known, and I definitely would have put Kilcoo in that bracket as well. But those clubs would have known our goal is not just to win the county championship. You know, Kilcoo had such a stranglehold over the Down Football Championship that, look, even though no matter what they say to you in an interview, no matter what they say to you in a press conference where they say, oh, we're just focusing on the next game and all that media trained stuff. But the reality is they would have been expecting to get out of the Down Championship. So when they got to Ulster, they would have been in familiar territory. They would have been like, look, we know what to do here. We've been here before. Whereas Errigal Kieran, you look at it, Errigal Kieran are just the new champions in Tyrone, but nobody in over a decade has gone back to back in the Tyrone Championship. It is the most competitive club championship anywhere in the country. And that's why when Enda McGinley is saying, look, to win a Tyrone Championship is amazing, I'm like, I believe him. I believe that Errigal would have been setting out to win the Tyrone Championship because it's been so difficult to do over the last few years for them. So that when they get out into Ulster, they are actually in bonus territory. And I would have thought that that might have played into Kilcoo's hand because they would have expected to have been at the Ulster final by this point of the season. And Errigal maybe wouldn't have. They would have hoped it, but I don't think they would have expected it the same way that Kilcoo did. But Errigal's performance, man, was absolutely incredible. And just in a general scope, I've just been thinking about the entire year. And like 2024 has just been a year of change in the GAA. It's been a break from the norm, not just in the club championship, but you look at the inter-county game. We had Dublin knocked out. Kerry didn't make the final. We had Armagh and Galway compete against each other in the All-Ireland final for the first time. In the hurling, Limerick taken out in the semi-final. And then you move to the club championship, LGFA as well, Dublin knocked out, Meath knocked out, year of change, except for Camogie, Cork stayed on top. But in the club championships, then we've have Kilmacud Crokes getting knocked out, Waddy Graham's Glen getting knocked out, Ballymacarbery and Waterford in the LGFA finally losing. Like, just across the board, it's just been complete change. And that's led to the competitions in general being a lot more exciting, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, I think we complained for so long in Gaelic football that it was too much of the same teams, and obviously as Dublin fans, it probably suited us, you know, inter-county football.
I think as Dublin fans, we might be able to agree. It might not be the case for the next few years.
Maybe not. No, maybe not. But yeah, like, I mean, generally, like, I mean, it was the same teams, Kerry, Mayo, blah blah blah. But now, like, it seems wide open, and I know, like, going maybe a little bit off topic, but next season, like in the All Ireland Football Championship, like, I think it's genuinely, you could look between 6, 7, maybe 8 teams to potentially win the All Ireland next year. You could make a case for either. I think every team that's in Division 1 next year, maybe barring Mayo, and that's no discredit to them, but I think all other 7, in my opinion, you could really, like, kind of make a case to go and win the All Ireland. Watch Mayo actually go and do it now or something. But yeah, no, it's just completely wide open, and yeah, like, it's been an incredible year, really. Hurling as well has been mad. You look at the All Ireland Club Hurling Championship as well, what Sarsfields did to Ballygunner, and many other games as well. So yeah, like, and going into the semi-finals, it is a breath of fresh air because it's new teams and you don't really know. Like, we could all sit here and we'll probably each have our favorites and our picks to go all the way and win it, but you couldn't really say it with any huge degree of confidence because a lot of these teams haven't been here. Like, and I know Crokes historically are probably the team that have been here the most, but all the players haven't. Do you know that way? Like, not in the club championship. So it's completely new territory for everyone.
That doesn't matter a jock. If you've been here, it doesn't seem to matter this year.
Yeah.
All the experiences with Pádraig Pearses, they lost to Coletta. All the experiences with Kilcoo, they lost to Errigal. All the experience in the Dublin final was with Kilmacud Crokes. They lost to Coola. Like, literally, in the Dublin final, I know to bring it back to there, but in the Dublin final, when Luke Ward's shot hit the net, and Kilmacud were level with Coola. There was not one part of me that thought the Coola were going to win that game. Not one part of me. I thought Con O'Callaghan sent off. Kilmacud could have just equalised with a fantastic goal. And we're in the final few minutes. Now what's going to happen is Mannion's going to curl one over off his left and Kilmacud are going to scrape through by a point. I genuinely thought that. So this year, everything that seemed to make sense in previous years doesn't seem to make sense this season. So whatever my immediate prediction is for the All-Ireland football semi-finals, I think I might go deliberately the other way. If I think that, that Errigal Kieran have the better players on paper, therefore they probably should beat Dr. Crokes, I might look the other way and say that Dr. Crokes are probably going to win. But we'll get into the game as well. So you mentioned there the perfect start. Mr. Ice Cold Joe Goose doing the Cole Palmer celebration. We don't see a lot of that in the GA. And I have to say, I absolutely loved seeing a little cheeky celebration, bit of banter with the Kilcoo players. Probably wasn't that friendly, the banter. But any iconic GA celebrations stick out to you?
Yeah, it's a hard one to know. Like, I remember Andy Moore giving it large to the Dublin fans on the hill. That was actually my first Dublin game on the hill, would you believe? I was 11. I think that was 06, I think it was. And yeah, just like the abuse he got, it was eye-opening to say the least. Do you know what I mean? I thought I'd heard, I thought I'd seen it, 11-year-old me thought I'd seen it all at that stage, but oh no, that was very interesting to hear, to be fair. And it was also an introduction into Andy Moran as well. Like, kind of just, I always knew who he was after that because of that moment. But yeah, I don't know, you had Robert Finnerty last year doing the
Palmer,
the Cole Palmer as well.
Oh, Mulligan's is a personal favourite, even though it was
I was going to say,
that moment he stood there and just stared at the hill. I was like,
yeah,
this fella doesn't give him monkeys. Like, this fella is literally, he's got 82,000 people in them. The majority of them are Dubs, and he doesn't care. He's just staring, jawing at the hill. Characters like that are good for the sport, in my opinion. There's Gaelic football has room for that. It has room for a bit of cheekiness in your celebrations and everything like that.
I think so. Yeah, I think we need more of it, to be honest. I know maybe I think it's one of them things where it's not really I think as Irish people we're very you don't want to be too cocky, too arrogant. It's always about keeping your cards close to your chest, and you don't want to be made look a fool. You don't want to celebrate, and then if your team loses, you don't want to be made look an idiot or blah blah blah. But, you know what I mean? But I think we should see more of it. Rian O'Neill, to be fair, he's done a few little celebrations here and there.
Yeah, he doesn't mind, and that's what's made Rian O'Neill a household name, man. Me and you are both UFC boxing fans. Let's be honest, the boxing press conferences most of the time are painful. They're so boring because all of them just toe the line and they don't want to, the biggest sellers in sport. This isn't just boxing and UFC, but the biggest sellers in sport are the ones that stack the pressure on themselves. Dublin in the 2000s, yes, they didn't win anything in terms of the All-Ireland. They won Leinster titles, obviously. Obviously, that sounds a bit disrespectful now, but they didn't win the ultimate prize. They wanted an All-Ireland. They didn't win it. But what made that Dublin team so addictive to watch was they always ramped the pressure up on themselves by being a bit cocky, by playing Russian roulette, by literally pushing right up on the opposition, by having a bit of swagger about them. And it usually, to be fair, went up in smoke. 2008, we got eliminated by Tyrone, absolutely demolished. In 2009, we got demolished by Kerry. Or we lost usually the game of the year, to Mayo in 2006 or to Kerry in 2007. But the one thing you couldn't deny about that Dublin team was if you were going, you were going to be entertained. And while... that's what I mean, is that I like that we're kind of moving back to a bit more hectic now in Gaelic football, because we'll get on to the Munster final, but one stat which is absolutely shocking was that there wasn't a shot at the posts between the 7th and 20th minute of the game. Regardless what you want to talk about conditions or anything. I've played in some horrific conditions. and like you still shoot, man. Like you still get a shot away at the goal. Like that's not a weather issue. That's a style of play issue. But we'll come to that game later. Yeah, so that goal goes in from Joe Goose. Errigal get off to a perfect start. They got that goal inside the first 5 minutes. Kilcoo were never going to back down to that. And by halftime, it was 6 points to a goal and 3. Kilcoo's main scorers are Niall Kane, Paul Devlin, Darrell Brannigan, Errigal Kieran got points from Dara Canavan and Thomas Canavan to leave it level at halftime. 1-3 to 6 points. At halftime, watching this game, what were your thoughts? Who did you think was going to push on? Because obviously Errigal had made the start, but then they had that goal. But apart from that, they only scored once from play, and that was Dara Canavan's point. Only 1 point from play in the first half. Kilcoo had leveled it up at halftime. Honestly, I expected Kilcoo to find a way to win.
Yeah, I thought they'd get the job done as well. Because defensively they were very, very strong. Errigal Kieran were struggling to get through them. I know they got the goal. But generally speaking, I felt like Kilcoo would kick on a little bit more. They'd have a bit more going down the home stretch. But actually, like probably the opposite happened. Like, and it probably is one of them things where Kilcoo probably are more of an aging team, maybe than Errigal Kieran in some ways. And I think you saw that in the final 10, 15 minutes. Like Errigal Kieran started turning the ball over a lot more. They were a lot sharper on their attacks. They were just more clinical. And I thought Kilcoo just started getting a little bit wasteful. I think they were doing such a good job defensively, but it was going the other way where they just at times overplayed the ball, overcarried it, ran into traffic, and didn't take enough risks. And I think, as you said, like with conditions and everything else, and I'm sure when we get onto that other game, but like at the end of the day, football is about taking risks. And like too often we do see teams, like I get like you want to keep the ball, you want to slow the game down and everything else, and you want to keep possession because ultimately it's a way of controlling the game, and it's also a form of defense as well. Like if you have the ball, obviously the other team can't score.
And Dublin were the kings of that.
Yeah,
Dublin would just starve teams by taking the ball away from
them. But at some point, like you have to pull the trigger. Do you know what I mean? And you have to take it on. And I just think Kilcoo weren't doing that enough. And to be fair to Errigal Kieran, they were just that bit sharper, that bit quicker, and got over the line in the end.
Yeah, and definitely a halftime look. There's no doubt McGinley would have had a serious chat with them at halftime. And look, I think he's a fantastic manager. And I personally think if they had it gone, O'Rourke is a great pick, but I think I would have personally actually leaned towards McGinley. I just look at, his energy with the Errigal players, the project that he looked like he was building with Antrim. I remember when McGinley left Antrim, I was like, that's actually a massive blow, in my opinion, to Antrim, because I really bought into what McGinley was doing there with them. They were hard to beat. There seemed to be a bit of progress being made there. And I personally would look at O'Rourke and think, how long will O'Rourke be with Tyrone for? Whereas McGinley, I could look at that and be like, that's a 5-year project right there with McGinley. And I think he would be the perfect man to have, the boys that they have coming through, like your Shea O'Hare's, Owen McElholmes. The Canavan brothers still are new enough on the scene. Like Dara is the main man already, but like let's not forget he's only been in the team properly for 2 years, 3 years. Like that still isn't. And I'm not talking been in the team. Like he's been in the squad 3 years, and he's already got that level of responsibility on him. So I personally think McGinley, having him around the squad would definitely be a good move for O'Rourke, in my opinion. But I think O'Rourke probably is a good shout. And especially he was involved in the FRC, so he might know a thing or two about the new rules that we have coming up, just like Michael Murphy will bring to McGuinness's table. Moving into the second half, look, games like this, it was never going to be pretty, and it was never going to be beautiful football and everything like that. Very low scoring game, and quite a lot of indiscipline. And I definitely have seen the clips from the game. There was one TG Carr clip on Twitter which has been seen over 23,000 times, and it was just in the 41st minute. A little scuffle, I think we'll call it, between Ryan Johnston and a few of the Errigal Kieran lads. And to be honest, how nobody got sent off in that bit when I've seen at least 6 or 7 punches thrown is baffling. But in this game, it was always going to be the case that it would be on the edge and it would be hot-headed. And eventually somebody did get sent off, and that was Darrell Brannigan. He got sent off in the 45th minute. A lot of people, including me, put this as a key turning point in the game, because all of a sudden now Errigal had the numerical advantage. Peter Hart immediately leveled the game, and now going into the final quarter, it was definitely advantage Errigal.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think it was, as you said, it was a 50-50 game up until that point, and 50-50 game most away. But yeah, like, especially in conditions like that, you go a man down against a team of the quality of Errigal Kieran. As you said, like, Kilcoo, like, defensively, I think we're very, very strong, but it was just going down the other end. But then that just left more holes for Errigal to exploit, and they did.
You think it was a red card?
It's a hard one to judge, really. Like, it's it's one of them. Sometimes you see them given, sometimes you don't. Like, I think ultimately,
my first reaction was yes. My first reaction was I thought it was a red card. He catches him full on the jaw, like Darrell Brannigan. Okay, this is going to sound harsh. Darrell Brannigan isn't the tallest bloke in the world. Like, don't get me wrong. If me and him were, he'd probably, batter me if me and him were to mark each other on the pitch. But he isn't the tallest bloke. So for his shoulder to get up to your man's jaw means that shoulder must have been high. Like, when you see situations like one player I always feel sorry for is Brian Kennedy. Because Brian Kennedy, what is he, 6'6"? Anytime Brian Kennedy goes to shoulder anybody, he's usually hitting them in the head because of how big Brian Kennedy is. But this situation, he was physically smaller than Oran Robinson that he felled. So for him to catch him in the jaw like that, you must have had your shoulder perched up.
Yeah, like, it's like I think ultimately we don't really want to see.
He didn't complain either. He didn't look like he was stunned.
Yeah, like, unfortunately, like, I think it is one of them things where Kilcoo do have a reputation for this. Like, we've saw them, get players sent off before. We saw the kind of big scuffle as you mentioned previously as well. We've seen this in previous seasons as well. So it's nothing new really with Kilcoo. Like, they do have a history of this, a habit of this, and everything else. And it is one of them things where their reputation is, it is there, and it probably does go against them at times. But ultimately, like, it's like, it is one of them. You see a lot of this sometimes in football, and sometimes it doesn't get punished. But you feel like a lot of this should be punished more, because ultimately you don't want to see. I mean, it could have caused serious injury. There's no doubt about it. So, look, ultimately, I think it probably was a red card in the end. But it's just one of them where, as you said, like, with the scuffle, nothing gets given there. Like, that's just one of them for the referee, where, like, he's either going to send one man off from both teams, he's going to leave it, or like you never actually. I think David Goff was probably the only referee I've seen where a mad scuffle broke out, and then he said, "Yeah, do you know what? You're getting a red card, and 4 of yous are getting a red card as well." He's the only one.
That as well, though. It wasn't even just the sendings off, but I remember it was who he sent off. Like, he sent off Peter Hart, who's notoriously, like, never in trouble with referees. He sent off Kieran McGeary, who at the time was the footballer of the year. Like, he really went for, like, the biggest names in the bunch, and he was like, "You're gone, you're gone, you're gone." And to be fair, it is a difficult way to. It's a difficult thing to police, especially when it all kicks off. Like, especially when it proper kicks off, it's very difficult to police and to know who did what. But it's a very conflicting issue, because we don't like to see the bad ones. The way I look at it, like, is I personally, definitely winced when I seen instances like, for example, Tiernan Kelly a couple of years ago scraping Damien Comer's face, Philly McMahon eye gouging Kieran Donaghy. Like, I've no respect for those type of instances, and I will never, ever, ever understand why people did that. Like, that's because if you want to be a hard man, a tough guy, that's not being a hard man and a tough guy. That's, playing absolutely filthy like that. Players like, for example, Mick Fitzsimons, to me, Lee Keegan, like, these are tough players. lot of cornerbacks in the 90s, like Faye Devlin and people like that. Like they'd stand beside you, hit you as hard as shoulders you'll ever receive, but they won't like eye gouge you or like stuff or scrape your face. Like it's so I personally have a lot of respect for tough stuff, but I don't have a lot of respect for, you know, dirty instances in the game. But it's conflicting because when you see, you know, oh, these teams really don't like each other, it makes it fun. Like it makes it fun, and it makes it a lot more interesting. And you think about the rivalries in the past, like Dublin and Meath in the 90s was a boxing match and a GAA match. Cork and Meath in the 90s was exactly the same. In the late 80s, early 90s, Armagh, Tyrone in the 2000s, you pretty much knew something was going to kick off at some point. And Kerry Cork, you know, in the late 2000s, 2010s, Noel O'Leary, Mark and Paul Galvin, every time, like you knew something was going to kick off between the two of them. And my point is it added something to the occasion. What I don't like is when it goes past that line and somebody eye gouges or somebody fish hooks like Paul Galvin did to Owen Cadigan all those years ago. When instances like that happen, I'm like, I can't get behind that. But when I see instances like, for example, you remember when Con O'Callaghan and John Small had that famous incident where they laughed, like, or when John Small and David Clifford fist bumped after wrestling. Yeah. I like that because I'm like, right, at least they respect each other. Like if I was to compare it to a rivalry, maybe in the UFC, say I'd compare it to like Usman Masvidal, where you could tell there's a lot of respect here. They are talking a bit of shit to sell the fight, but there's a lot of respect here between these two guys. I like rivalries like that. Errigal Kilcoo, do you think it was a respectful rivalry, or do you think there's genuine needle between the two teams?
It's hard to really know, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, like obviously down Tyrone, like it's not that far, you know, geographically from each other. I wouldn't say it's as big a club rivalry probably as other club championships. I think Kilcoo, I'm sure, probably have a lot more disdain for her other clubs in Down. And, you know, we've saw some fierce battles with Kilcoo in other games. There was a league game, you know, a couple of years ago that had to get abandoned. There was, you know, referees getting drafted in and out and all sorts of chaos that's been happening over there. So to be honest, not really. I didn't really see like a huge amount of the disrespect. And obviously, as you said, the challenge from Darrell Brannigan, like it was a bad tackle. Like he's clearly he's left it in on him. But I don't really think there's like a huge amount of bad blood or anything of that nature.
For the record, I don't think Darrell Brannigan was trying to like hit your man in the jaw. I think he thought, I'm gonna absolutely cream him here with a shoulder.
Yeah.
But I don't think he meant to do that, and hence why when he got the red card, he more or less took it.
That's the thing.
It definitely changed the game. It absolutely changed the game. But the reality is, Errigal still had to go and win it. They still had to go and win the game. Darrell Brannigan had been sent off, but Kilcoo will never, ever like give up easy. And the reality was it was always going to come down to the final few minutes, to the final few seconds. And it came down to Peter O'Mccartan. The man of the match, he pops up, curls it over with the right foot. Absolutely incredible score. His emotion in the post-match interview was absolutely incredible to see. You could tell how much it meant to him. He was speaking about how he was so proud of himself that he had the nerve to go for it. And I just thought that was really, really nice to hear somebody expressing, you know, true emotions in that post-match interview. It's an incredible score from McCartan to win the game. Like, I mean, to have the confidence, as he said, to take it on at the end. That's the last shot, pretty much. And Kilcoo out of the championship. Errigal Kieran, Ulster champions for the first time in 22 years. They're into the All-Ireland semi-final. It was about as dramatic a finish as you could get.
Absolutely. And like even another thing on that red card as well is like, not only is it Kilcoo being down to 14, but it's also like that mental boost that gives the opposition as well. And especially in a game like that where it is so even. But as you said, yeah, like it's huge. Like it's obviously a hugely famous club for, you know, the players they produced in the past. Obviously Peter Canavan, managers and everything else that have been involved. So I think we always, like, especially with these kind of clubs like an Errigal Kieran, where we're starved for quite a long time in Tyrone. So the fact they've, become a dominant force in Tyrone again, and then also now gone on to win Ulster, like, you've seen the emotion, you've seen the celebrations. I've seen like a Monday Club kind of video that Errigal Kieran themselves put out, and you see them all like singing and going nuts. So, like, I tell you, like, it looked like the crack was absolutely 90, to be honest with you. And fair play. Like, obviously the semi-finals won't be till the new year now, so look, they can celebrate it, they can enjoy it. And probably maybe enjoy it more than a Tyrone Club Football Championship, because you've got a bit more time to prepare yourself, and you can enjoy the Christmas and everything else. But yeah, like, you saw the emotion from Peter Og a full time as well. And yeah, look, I mean, maybe we might get into it, but they could go and do it. Like, it's been that kind of, when you look at Ulster, like, Ulster, I think, won almost everything this year between Sigerson, All Ireland, in football, college, like, club championships, you know what I mean? Intermediate, junior, senior.
And let's not forget the F4C, the Railway Cup.
Yeah, they won that as well. Famous penalty win. So, yeah, like, I mean, and then you even look at it as well. I know 2025 is a new year, but I'm telling you, it could happen. It could happen. Like, the only thing I think, look, I mean, I think Cooley could maybe beat them, but, like, it's hard to know, really, because how good really are Coolera Strandhill? Like, they beat the Mayo champions and the Roscommon champions. Like, that is very impressive. They do deserve a lot of credit. And Crokes, to be fair, are going under the radar a little bit as well. Like, they haven't, like, the level of opposition they've played in Munster hasn't been the same level of opposition, obviously, like an Errigal that's had to play. So it's wide open.
It certainly is. I think, simply to tag on to the point that you made there, I just think it's anybody's. I think it's anybody's to win, and I wouldn't be putting my life on any of the four teams. I'll leave it at that. So Errigal will be in the semi-final against Dr. Crokes. Dr. Crokes beat Lockmore Castellani by 15 points to 1-6 in Mallow. Look, Dr. Crokes were, pretty much everyone's favourites to win this game. Lockmore Castellani, their incredible year comes to an end. Obviously, they won the double again in Tipperary, winning the hurling and the football, and they made it to the Munster football final after beating the Clare champions as well along their way. They've had an incredible year. Like, the reality is, for the squad that they have, it's such a small squad between both of the sports. Like, Noel McGrath, Brian McGrath, John McGrath, this McGrath, that McGrath, any McGrath, all throughout the spine of both the hurling and the football teams. And the reality is, they have been absolutely incredible. Matt, you said it earlier on one of our previous episodes, that he thinks that, by the end of the year, you could well see Lockmore Castellani being Club of the Year. I'd be fairly happy to name them as Club of the Year right here, right now, because what they've done with the size of the squad they have, 13 of the starting 15 were over the age of 30. Like, so it's not a squad, that is peak age either. They've been absolutely incredible.
Yeah, like, they've showed some amount of fight, some amount of battle. As you said, like, in both hurling and football, for them to achieve what they've done. Like, they won the double a couple of years ago as well in Tipperary. So yeah, like, the fact they keep coming back as well, I think, is what's most impressive, because, like, they won that double in Tipperary, I think it was in 21 or 20. And then for a couple of years after that, they struggled to kind of reach them same heights, which is completely understandable, because doing a double, like, when you have literally the same players playing week in, week out for both codes, is virtually unheard of, to be honest with you. And like, with the quality as well that's in the Tipperary Hurling Championship, and then you think of Clonmel Commercials, who've obviously been so dominant for so long in the Tipperary Football Championship, the fact that they've managed to find it within themselves to come back, like, I think it's courageous. And you said the McGraths, who are as good footballers as they are hurlers, like, they're extraordinary. And yeah, like, even in this game, look, I mean, it was 4 points to 3 at half time. It wasn't a great game. Conditions were very much probably in favour of Lockmore in the first half. Crokes then were playing with the wind in the second half, and they started to just get a little bit more joy from that, in fairness. But overall, like, they battled hard, and it did make a bit of a game of it towards the end, but ultimately, like, it was very comfortable for Crokes, if we're being honest.
Yeah, it was. And like the reality is I was watching the game, and from very early into the second half, I was just like, yeah, I see no way back for Loughmore here. Even I think when Crokes tagged on a couple of points and all of a sudden it was 7-3 off the restart, I remember being like, yeah, I don't see Loughmore coming back, because the one thing that I felt like Loughmore didn't have was I didn't see any pace in their team. Like I didn't see the possibility for them to really catch, Dr. Crokes out on the break. Like they were so reliant on Liam McGrath's free kicks and getting Crokes to foul them and stuff like this. And I was just like, they're so predictable going forward. Unfortunately, Crokes know what they're going to come with. They're going to try and get it to this player or that player, but there's going to be no catching them on the counter-attack. Dr. Crokes at the back there, the Gavin White just cleaning up everything. Like they're too strong back there. And Fionn Fitzgerald, the fullback, Shane Murphy and goal, they're too comfortable. And I can't see Loughmore being able to reel them back in, because down at the other end in the second half, Tony Brosnan, Kieran O'Leary, Micheál Burns, they all started clicking into gear and just hitting their stride. And once that happened, you knew that whatever Loughmore were going to be able to get at one end, Dr. Crokes were going to be able to get at the other. And I think if Loughmore had scored a goal earlier, I think Dr. Crokes just would have scored a goal going the other way, because I think that they'd kind of kicked into cruise control by that point when it was 15 points to 6. I think that they were just like, game's over. And how many times do we see a goal like that? And if you watch that goal back, look, it was a good finish by Philip O'Connell, but it was a sloppy goal for Dr. Crokes to concede. Look, the reality is this championship is just there for winning. And, far be it from me to scrutinize how somebody got through the way that they did. But apart from the Castlehaven game, they really, really were pushed close by Rathcormac. They only beat them by a point. They're the Waterford champions. And then for long spells in this game, Loughmore Castellani were very limited. As I said, I have the greatest respect for them, but they were limited in what they could offer as a threat to Dr. Crokes. So Dr. Crokes still were overwhelming favourites in terms of going forward. As I said, the game went from between the 7th to the 20th minute without a shot at the posts. And this game, for long periods, reminded me just how much I'm looking forward to see the new rules in action. Because with the old rules, sometimes the game can be very difficult to watch. And it was clear that Loughmore were just trying to stay in the game as much as they possibly could, hang on to the ball, sit back. And Dr. Crokes weren't really great in the first half either. Very slow to break them down. Their key players were very quiet. They finally woke up in the second half. Brosnan, Burns, Kieran O'Leary came in. They all clicked into gear and kind of put the tie beyond Loughmore. But Crokes will need to be better than that if they have any chance against Errigal Kieran in the semi-final.
Yeah, absolutely they will. Like one thing about them though is they do keep finding ways to win. Like they've won the league this year. They won the county championship, they won the club championship, and now they've won the Munster Club Football Championship. So they've done
amazing.
4 trophies. Like it's extraordinary. Like, and fair enough. Like when you look at the level of opposition they're playing and everything else, maybe some of their performances haven't been great. They do look like a team that probably lack the physicality that maybe we would see from like a Kula or maybe from an Errigal Kieran. I think they've got a lot of technically good players, but I don't know if they've got like the physical kind of powerhouses that we see from, like the likes of Joe Goose, Peter Hart, these lads, Peter Og McCartan, and then with Kula, like they've plenty of big players in there as well. So I think that's probably what they will struggle with. And I do think Errigal Kieran probably will grind them out in Croke Park. But as you said, like Micheál Burns, outstanding. Tony Brosnan, 5 points from play. And look, they're beating what's been put in front of them, albeit look against Rathcormac, they were very, very flaky that day. And as you said, like it was so close to going to, the other way, and what a story that would have been. But yeah, look, I mean, ultimately they do keep finding the way to win, and that is the most important thing. And ultimately for them, it's it's just 2 more wins now, and then I mean they shut everyone up for good. Would be unbelievable, wouldn't it?
It'd be absolutely incredible, because then that's, 5 trophies out of 5 pretty much. Like, absolutely bonkers in terms of just how good that year turned out to be for Dr. Crokes. And then we have to talk about what has been one of the key defining factors of that, Pat O'Shea. Like, this guy is CV, an All-Ireland winner with Kerry. He comes back into the fold as Dr. Crokes' boss. All of a sudden, their form turns around. So whatever connection he has with them lads, it seems to work. It seems to work. Unfortunately, going the other way, even though they had an absolute stellar season, as I said, 13 of the 30 players now that started for Lockmore there yesterday are over the age of 30. And you look at the Tipperary Championship and you look at Turles Sarsfields and the youngsters that they have breaking through in the hurling, for example, like Dara Stakelum and players like that. How much longer until somebody breaks them?
Yeah, like, I mean, that is the thing. And we have seen a lot of clubs, big clubs in the past, who have been in these kind of positions, and then a couple of years later you see a story, they've been relegated down to intermediate. Do you know what I mean? We've saw this quite a lot in the last couple of seasons. Not saying that's going to happen to Lockmore. Like, they've got fierce warriors, fierce battlers, and look, I think a lot of them lads will probably still. It happened to Vincent's, yeah. It happened to Vincent's. We've saw what's happened with Austin Stacks as well.
Yeah.
They were in a similar position to Crokes, a couple of seasons ago, albeit they didn't get through Munster. But so I think it could happen, but like, they are a very, very good side. And the fact that a couple of years ago they won the double, and then they kind of went off the boil for a few seasons, and now have come roaring back again. I think the players are all very, very well bought in. There'll definitely be a few lads there, I'm sure, who'll be waiting to step up. But look, whether they'll get back to these stages again, it's kind of hard to know, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And then just before we wrap the episode up, do you have a quick prediction in your head as to how you think the 2 semi-finals are going to go, and then how you think the final would play out?
Yeah, I think Cuala will be Culera Strandhill. I would be fairly confident of that, and there's a multitude of reasons. I think both semi-finals in Croke Park. Am I right in saying that? So I think that's a massive factor for Cuala. And like, don't get me wrong, Culera have had an unreal year. Like, fair play to them for what they've done. They've come through Connacht and beat Pádraig Pearses in the best way that they can. But I just think Cuala, just with the experience of some of their players that they have, I know as a club in football they haven't been here. Obviously a few of the lads have been there in hurling, and obviously a lot of lads have been there with Dublin as well. So I think they will come through that. I think for the other game, like Errigal, Kieran, Crokes, I think will be closer. I wouldn't be entirely shocked if Crokes pulled it off, to be honest with you, because it's been that kind of year. But I think I probably would go with Errigal, Kieran to win it, and I think at this point I would edge towards them. I would edge them to win the All-Ireland. Yeah,
to the T. We both used our one brain cell to come together and pick Errigal, Kieran.
There we go. On point for one spot.
That's it. Yeah, I'd be kind of thinking along them lines. I think in Croke Park, I think it would be really, really difficult for Culera to keep tabs on the O'Callaghan brothers. I think the midfield battle as well, O'Coffig-Byrne and Peter Duffy, I think will probably get that one locked down. As good as Kevin Banks was against Pádraig Pearses, I think Cool actually do have a stronger midfield pairing than Pádraig Pearses do, in my opinion. So it'll be really, really difficult to separate Errigal and Crokes, but I probably would lean towards Errigal just based off their tenacity, like their absolute fierce work rate. I'd probably lean towards them, leaving Errigal against Cuala in the final. A toss of a coin at that point, but based off how impressive they've been, I probably would lean towards Errigal to win the All-Ireland Club Championship for 2024/25, which means it's probably going to be Culera Strandhill who win the All-Ireland Club Championship for this season, knowing the way that it's gone. But yeah, guys, that is another weekend review show finished up here on Cluiche. Big thank you to anybody who tuned in over the course of the 50 minutes. Big thank you to Aaron Prendergast from Gaelic Games Fan TV for jumping on for this episode. Do be sure to check out his channel if you have not already. I'll be jumping on for him with a Dublin preview as well, which will be coming out soon enough. So make sure you check that one out as well. That's all from this episode, guys. Garmila Magwiv. Make sure to tune in next weekend when we have another weekend review show. Till then, take care.